No, not yet. Oh, there we go. Hi, welcome. I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt from New York Magazine, and I'm very pleased to be here to speak to Maura Tierney. Let's bring her out.
Hi.
Are you guys big Affair fans? It's amazing this season, isn't it? And I'm loving that we get to see more of Helen and her story. It's very exciting. But before we get to the Affair, I always like to ask people, how'd you get into this crazy craft, this crazy business? What led you to acting?
I always acted in high school, and actually like preschool. I was in a play.
What play were you in
It
preschool?
was some play about Jesus. I went to Catholic. I did, and I was an angel, and I said a little poem about Jesus. It felt long to me at the time. And then I really actually wanted to be a dancer, and I studied dance, but I didn't really start early enough, and I didn't have the right body, and I wasn't good enough. But
It's a tough thing to get into. A lot of obstacles.
there were, and I had like all of them. But so I was in my freshman year of college. I was a dance major.
This was in Boston?
And NYU.
NYU, okay.
And then it just wasn't working out, and I had friends in the drama department. It seemed like what they were doing were really interesting, so I switched.
And did you see yourself more as a theater performer? Did you have aspirations to do TV and film?
You know what? I didn't have aspirations beyond like what was immediately in front of me. I was very intimidated the whole time. I just knew it was something I wanted to do, but my classmates sort of intimidated me, and the teachers did, and everything did. So I was very much like about what was directly in front of me at the moment.
And despite the intimidation, what was it about acting that you enjoyed?
I think I enjoyed pretending. I mean, from a young age, that's just fun to do. But I remember I saw the movie Frances when I was like 17 years old, and I remember thinking about that performance. Oh wow, if I could ever like make someone feel, you know, what she's doing, what they're doing is actually making me like really feel something. I thought that was something to aspire to.
Jessica Lange's amazing.
Yeah.
And then after school, did you set your sights on LA immediately? How did you make the transition out to Hollywood?
I was only going to go to LA for 3 months, right? And then it was 22 years. Because a bunch of my friends from college were coming out here, and my dad was in politics in Boston, and he was running for mayor. So my plan was to come out for the summer and go back and work on his campaign. And I very, very luckily got a job. So not right away, but like I think in August or September, but right away.
And was your family supportive of you being in the arts?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, I always had guilt that I didn't go back. He lost, which I always thought was always my fault. But yeah, they were very supportive. But it ended up, I started working.
And what was your experience doing auditions and making the rounds on that? And did you have an agent at the point helping you, or did you sort of do it on your own?
No, at that point, like we mailed out our pictures to everybody, to casting directors, to agents. It was 1987. So we would do like mass mailings, and luckily a couple of casting directors called me in, and then one of them called Ro Diamond, who was my first agent, who I had to audition for her. So that process took a while, but it was, we just did it by mail, which is weird.
Wow. Could be better or worse. It's hard to tell.
I don't know. I think better.
In some ways, it was slower, and maybe more consideration was taken with decisions. And
yeah, I mean, I just don't know. It seems, well, we can get to that or not, but putting oneself on tape and all this stuff is like hard.
It's really hard. Well, there's so much pressure now to be great in the tape.
Yeah,
and before you just had to be cute
on their phones. I don't know. It's like really, and then you're doing it yourself in a vacuum, which I find really difficult sometimes. Like, I don't know. I think it was more straightforward back in the day, but that's what old people say, I guess. I don't know.
I see no old people here, so we're good.
Me neither.
And were there specific roles that you found people were most interested in for you? Obviously, typecasting is part of an actor's reality, but were there specific things that they thought like, oh, you're perfect for this type of woman?
Yeah, I feel like that happened more in the end though, because like my first job, I played like the mean cheerleader, and it was like the best character work I've ever done. Like I don't know, like I wasn't like the sweet nice girl, which I then got cast as, you know.
It's hard to go from the mean bitch to the sweet nice
Right.
girl.
Well,
so.
she a little bit came around in the end, but she
Of course she did.
She was right. She was like the nasty popular cheerleader, but then I got sort of grounding roles, and I often played this straight guy, which is okay. It's a thing, you know. It is a thing, but that is what ended up happening.
And what was your first SAG job, official SAG job?
Student exchange. It's a TV movie where I played the mean cheerleader. That was my first job.
That was the one.
Yeah.
An auspicious beginning.
Uh-huh.
And then
It was, because the Bionic Woman was in it, Lindsay Wagner.
oh my God,
I
have to find this movie.
Captain Steubing was in it. O.J. Simpson was in it.
Oh my God.
I know.
Did you have scenes with the juice?
No, but I did meet the Juice. The kid that was the star of it went on to direct. Oh God, I forget. It was sort of auspicious in the who was in the cast.
It sounds amazing, actually. And then I think I first got to know you on news radio, which was so great. So smart. And I think back to that show, well, I guess 20 years ago now, and it's hard to imagine something so smart being on NBC. No offense to NBC, but that was, I mean, that
One
was
of the
Friends
writers
and...
just emailed me today and
Really?
said, I'm still part of the NBC family. And I was like, well, I'm not anymore. It's really funny.
But it was a very heady comedy, I think, in a lot of ways, and obviously it helped usher in Frasier and a lot of those shows that were on at the time. But how did you end up getting that part?
I just auditioned for it in New York, and they sent the tape, when it was still taped, out here. But the funny thing about that is my audition got ruined somehow, and I had to come back and re-audition in New York on the day they were lighting the tree at Rockefeller Center. And that's where the casting office was. And it was like such a bitch to get to that. I was like,
Such a
I can't
nightmare.
believe she erased this thing. And I had to come back in and do it again on the worst day. But then I got the job. Well, I know. I got narrowed down to the job, and then they flew out two or three of us. I know one of them was an actress named Nina Shamasko and myself. And then
For the same part, you were vying for the same one.
and so this is the same day that rehearsal started.
Oh my God.
So we all had to go in front of the network and then sit in a trailer and wait and see, did you get the job?
Wow. Was this Brandon Tartikoff era still? Was he?
I think it was past him. It was
Past
Warren Littlefield.
Oh, Warren
era.
Littlefield.
Yeah. The inauspicious era of NBC. So that's how I got that job. It was fairly nerve-wracking.
And what was it like to step into a comedy? I mean, that was such a big deal to get an NBC comedy at that time. So much pressure.
Well, you know what? It was before that, though, because that year, I believe, was like, that's when Friends, I guess.
It was 95.
Seinfeld was
I
already
think
on.
Seinfeld was on. Yeah.
But Friends, ER,
That hadn't premiered
Caroline in the
yet.
City, that all became must-see TV. Did that
Right.
exist before?
I think you
my
were just
time?
before that, just on,
Right,
on,
so it
right on
wasn't
the cusp.
quite the
Right.
juggernaut. I remember Warren Littlefield at one of the parties standing on a bar going, "Ooh," like NBC was reaching this
Yes.
apex,
Yes.
which we were not a part of. I think they moved us like 16 times.
I
or
remember
something like
that, and the fact that you actually, the show survived despite
Yeah.
the moves, I think is really amazing.
16 might be it, but at least 12 or something. I think because it was 20 years ago, I did a little bit of press. People were doing, like, wanting to talk about it.
Right.
And they were saying, oh, it was so ahead of its time. And I actually think it was more unique than ahead of its time, because there's nothing really even like that
No.
now, except I think 30 Rock. Similarly, because we just tried to cram as many like absurd jokes as we could into a
Yes.
moment. There was never like a very special Thanksgiving news radio. It was like,
Thank God.
right, it was always
Yeah.
really unsentimental and lots of jokes. So,
But very smart, though.
yes,
I mean,
and really
Dave Foley brought with
conceptual.
him that Kids
Yeah.
in the Hall absurdity smart thing that I think, I had never seen him broadcast at that point in America.
I mean, yeah, and also I had the writers. They're all like, you know, Harvard-y, lampoony dudes.
And what was it like to work with Phil Hartman?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
I was going to say there was nobody over 30 at the time, but except Phil, who actually was like 12, so it didn't matter that he
Yeah.
was over 30. It was really fun. It was really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a really funny, great really funny guy.
So talented.
Yeah.
He could do anything.
He
Really
could do
incredible.
anything, yeah.
And then obviously you had a great run on news radio, and after that ended, did you think like, okay, I want to do film now, I want to kind of break away from broadcast TV, because it wasn't, I guess ER came a couple of years after that, but did you?
No, right after.
It was immediately after?
Yeah,
Oh, it
because I
was, okay.
remember saying, like, when the show was done, I didn't really want to do another sitcom because I had had a really special experience on that show. And I remember thinking, well, if I got a job on something like NYPD Blue, that's what I was thinking. And then, like, ER called, like, a couple months later. So it was, I wasn't thinking, I was a fan of that show. I watched it. But that I was desirous of doing a drama.
And you had been doing film too. You had done Liar Liar during that time, and
Yeah, I
Forces
did,
of
I
Nature,
know,
and so
yeah.
you were kind of in a great position. You were doing both.
I was. I don't know. I primarily just mostly always felt more like a television actress because I guess that I just worked more in TV. But yeah, I was doing films at that point.
And did you find that, I mean, as we all talk about now, but the roles that you were being offered for film weren't as good as what you were doing on TV, or did you feel okay with what the opportunities were?
I felt
It was a weird
okay
time
with
in
what the opportunities were. It was a
It
weird.
was a weird time in movies. I think the late '90s was kind of a, I don't know.
It was,
Yeah.
and also the parts were good. They weren't bad. I feel like what I got comfortable with and used to was like good writers on TV. You get time to work with the actor, and then it becomes a little bit symbiotic, and they start to write to your strengths, which felt great. Whereas at that time for me in films, you know, there was the part of the girlfriend or the part of the wife, which is what I
Right.
was mostly playing, or
Right.
ex-wife, which was a little bit more rigid in terms of,
It was a
Type.
trope, essentially.
yes, trope.
But it's so interesting. It doesn't matter what part you play. I always feel like it's relatable. And there's this sort of effortlessness that if another actor had played the part, I don't know if it would have worked necessarily. So even those, like, in a movie like Liar Liar or Forces of Nature, where you aren't, the core of the action isn't on you, I still always feel like, oh, I'm so glad she's playing this part. Does that make sense to you guys? It's sort of like there's always this feeling of like, okay, now I believe it, whereas I may not have believed it otherwise.
Even when Dr. Abby was treating a chimp in the ER?
Yes, totally believable. It was the most relatable chimp treatment I've ever seen on screen. She had a rough time there for a while, too.
That's a nice thing to say. Thank you.
And then you had a setback a few years ago when you got sick, and I know that you were slated to be in Parenthood, and then you couldn't because of your illness. What was that like for you to emerge from that and work again, which you did fairly quickly?
Was it fairly quickly?
I feel like after I heard the news, and then you did another drama,
I did. That was a mistake.
the law.
Yeah.
show.
The Whole Truth, it was called.
It was The Whole Truth,
Which
yes.
was created by my friend from NYU who, that was, people were like, maybe you came back to work too soon. And I'm like, maybe I came back to this job too soon. I don't know if it was going back to work. It was too soon. It
Well,
was,
but it says a lot about you that you were willing to jump back into it. It doesn't matter what it was, you were willing to do it.
yeah. I mean, I did a play actually right after that. That's the thing that got me back into working. I did a play with this company called the Wooster Group in January of 2010, and that was really getting back to work, and that felt really good and different and great.
And I also loved how dark you're willing to go, especially on Rescue Me. That was
God.
that was
I've not watched that ever.
it's intense, but it's really for those people who were happy to see that you were better, it felt very cathartic watching that character sort of move through her situation too.
They were great. I mean, I love those guys, Dennis Leary and Peter Toland.
They're totally willing to just let you go for it too.
Yeah, and they were also willing to listen to me a little bit about the script, and I don't know. You know what? I love them. They were the first people to hire me after ER to play a completely different character that was this like rock and roll chick that didn't care, like so different from Abby. So they're the first people that let me do that. And then I was always supposed to come back, and then I got sick, and they were like, we still want to do it. And I was like, well, I'm bald. And they're like, that's okay. Like it was really, they were super, I don't know, they were great.
They weren't about artifice on that show.
No.
Like the crazier you could be was
Yeah.
their preference.
It was great.
And then so much has been talked about the affair and kind of its cultural significance and infidelity, and I've interviewed you guys for about a year and talking about this stuff. And the show is so solid in
talking about
season 2.
infidelity.
I know, it's people can't get enough. But the show is so full this season, and it's such a relief to see it just as good, and I think actually better this season because we see more of you and more of Josh Jackson's character. But having worked on this now for a year and a half, what are your thoughts about the themes that the show explores, and how's your mind changed, if at all, or not at all?
I get asked that question a lot, and I think my instinct is to go, no, we're just acting, and we are just acting. I mean, we're acting,
Right.
But you do think about it. I mean, I think about, well, I'm divorced, so there's something I thought about before, anyway, and I think the idea of monogamy, I do think about these things in terms of, are they as important as we place them as a society in a marriage, and people who are willing to look at that from a different angle? Is it more satisfying for them? I grew up very Catholic, you know, so yeah, it makes me think, but it is a TV show, so.
Sure. People weren't asking you for medical advice on ER, so it's sort
Exactly, right. That's what I'm going to say from now on. That's a good point.
And you
Yeah.
weren't expected to be an expert on
Right.
being an
Exactly.
ER doctor.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But for some reason, and Sarah Treem, the creator, has talked about this too, that she can't believe how willing people are to go to the mat for infidelity, no matter what side of the argument they're on.
It's totally true. They're
which is
willing
really
to go to the
interesting.
mat for that, either side, and also people are willing to go to the mat over like, is there a definitive, objective truth to the show? Like, whose point of view is right? And I'm always like, well, everybody and nobody. But
Right.
people, it touches a nerve because they want to know which thing actually happened.
Right.
So-
Or who to side with and who's...
Yeah, and
Right.
yeah,
Or that's probably because they've had their own experience with it too.
I think so, totally, yeah.
That's why people are invested. Is there a moment that you've filmed thus far in season 2? I mean, the day with the hair and the car and the arrest was pretty intense, I imagine. But is there a scene this season that you feel like she has broken through and really been able to kind of not have control of the narrative, but have a moment in the story, your character? I also love the scene with your mom when she leaves. That was really heartbreaking.
I know.
It was so
I
hard.
hate you. That's so harsh. Because I just heard some of it when I was
Yeah.
reading, which is excruciating.
So, and
But-
also, it's hard because she...
no, to
isn't-
listen to yourself is what I.
Well, she's also not a terribly likable character, but at the
Right.
same time, we totally get where you're coming from, and this is years of an oppressive...
And it's childish what she's doing,
Right.
sort of. But I actually think I heard in there something that I really liked, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about. But in this scene where she says to Noah, "You can call her back," and he's like, "No, it's okay," and she's like, "No, I want you to." I think that
That's-
joke is really funny.
No, that was great.
That's
and
like-
especially considering what had just happened with the son.
Yeah,
and-
like I like that moment. I thought it was a nice.
But I also love,
gesture on her.
I love that the writers kind of allowed him to be heroic in that episode where he's coming in and carrying him, and
Yeah.
Helen has seen him for the first time again as a good dad. I
Yeah,
thought that
it
was
was
really
like
great writing.
Time for poor Dom to get to do a heroic thing.
Yes, he's played with our allegiances a lot in the
Yeah.
last year. So in these conversations, people always like to know, and actors are always reluctant to give advice. But now 20 plus years as a very busy working actor, what do you tell people who come up to you and say, how should I break in, but also how do you sustain it? I think that's even the harder part of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think a lot of it is luck. I've been very lucky to work with great writers, so I just think that's luck. Like, I got lucky on ER, and I was on a long gig with great writers. I think there are great writers on this show. I think News Radio are great writers, so that part is luck. But I do think it's important to like what you're doing, because if you don't really like it, the humiliation is unbearable. I think. Do you know? I'm serious though. Like, if you
Yeah.
don't really care about it, it's not. It's
And a
that,
paycheck
that's-
can only go so far. too.
Yeah, because even as many paychecks as you get, I just had to put myself on tape, and then the director texted me, "Great work, tough choice," and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You are texting me this? Like, it's so humiliating." I made his name
So
in
the
my phone.
humiliation never
Humiliation,
ends.
is it worth it? That's what I put that as a contact, because So if you don't like it, it's like you have to. I feel like caring about it is the thing that helps sustain helps sustain me to put up with the difficulties of it.
And how have you worked with a team over the years, whether it's your agent and if you have a manager? How do you keep those relationships going? Because I know that can be very difficult, especially if you feel like you want to segue into other things and your team still sees you as something else. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, that happens. I mean, I left only once. I left my agency once a few years ago because I think that had happened. And I consider myself loyal, and I really liked the people I worked with. And it was however many years, 15 years or something like that. But it was like a bad marriage that we always fought. And there was no makeup sex. That's what I said to them. I said, we just always fight. There's no, it was just not good. And I'm still friendly with them. But something happened where they were stopping thinking creatively, and I didn't work for like 2 years or something. And then, so I switched agency. And it's not like anyone's so much better than the other, but there was fresh thought put into who you are.
I mean, even 15 years is a long time with the same people. Yeah. And on that front too, so many people struggle to get noticed and get their work noticed. And some of the best advice people have shared on the stage is to make your own work, and that's how you get noticed. But beyond that, how do you get in front of the people who can potentially help you? I think that's always the barrier.
Yeah, I don't know, because again, I feel like I've been lucky, and I consider myself kind of a hard worker, but not especially ambitious, or I certainly wasn't until maybe recently, and I'm 50. So I'm not so good at that, and now it's really hard because you have to brand yourself and do these things, which I didn't have to do. So I just was like a worker. Do you know what I mean? More than a strategizer.
And maybe that's actually a good thing for a few years, or at least until you find yourself in a
plateau.
Yeah. And then you can get creative.
Right.
And
or fire somebody.
Or fire. Yeah. Well, I always like to say, you're doing well when you actually are firing people.
Right.
I mean, it's a rite of passage. And if people aren't, in your business, then they need to be in your business.
Yeah, right.
And there's been so much discussion lately about the pay equality issues that women face in this business. Have you had specific moments and circumstances where you've had to fight for what you're worth?
I mean, I probably should have. I don't know.
Or did you feel like you didn't have the place to fight for yourself?
I
hear that from a lot of people.
I always sort of felt very grateful. These are things that are coming into the consciousness of the world, like in a way that was a little before. It's like I was before the time of this. So, it's wonderful that it's being recognized now.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I thought about. I'm like women's lib, not feminism. Like I grew up in the 70s. So, which of course there was, the ERA, but it wasn't quite there.
Well, there's also so much information now that it's become all that information.
And it should be at the forefront of people's, absolutely. But it just wasn't, I can't say it's something I championed.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had good experiences regardless.
Well, I was just ignorant. No, I think that's...
That helps happiness sometimes.
I guess, yeah.
Now we have too much information. It's actually a curse. I have one question from the audience from Shane. And Shane would like to know what episode on The Affair has been the most challenging for you to shoot?
Oh, that one tonight. Because I didn't like being in that ER. Because I felt like everything I was doing was so phony because I was on an ER for 8 years. And I didn't want to move my face.
That didn't even occur to me once watching that
I felt like paralyzed. I was like, I did not want to I don't know. I got crippled in those sets. I felt really...
Was that a set or an actual hospital?
It was an actual hospital, but it felt like the set. I don't know. It was really hard for me. I felt...
You just wish Dr. Carter was going to come around the corner and
help
you.
Ever?
I miss him.
And Dr. What the hell was Goran's name? Luca.
No, Luca. Oh.
But... Yeah, it was really hard. I felt really embarrassed. I was very self-conscious. I don't know. It was weird. It was hard.
Well, did not come through.
Good.
And then lastly, what has been your favorite episode? Either season 1 or season 2.
You know, there's one coming. Oh, season 1. There's an episode coming up this weekend where there's a scene with Dominic's character, with Noah and myself, from both of our point of view, and we're in a bar having drinks. We go to our where we went to college, where we met, and it's great because it's like old school. We're in the exact same place, and it's 2 different perspectives. And it was like 16 and a half pages of dialogue, or 18 pages, and we shot it in one day. And it's really fun, and one is more serious and one is a little more drunken, but it was really, it was great to do, it was a big challenge to do all that in one day, and the writing's really good, and the perspectives are very well thought out. I liked, it was really fun.
Well, I know we look forward to seeing it, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.